Well, Jay, we were talking about an historic first two rounds, and I know we love to deal in hyperbole, and what we see now is the best. But when you have a 12-point lead blown in 40 seconds with no foul shots, and then you see maybe one of the biggest upsets in the history of the tournament all in the first couple of rounds, I think it's got to be up there, right?
Look, man, last night, and I watch basketball for a living, okay? I mean, I'm invested in college basketball and NBA basketball. Every single game, I can tell you about stuff happening on the West Coast, even when it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Here, I love it. Last night made me feel like I was a teenager again watching basketball. We are all down in the war room. And this is where you definitely know I'm the youngest guy working here, because every big-time shot that was made during that Texas A&M UNI game, I got up and started running around the war room like a little kid. Like, I started doing laps, like jumping up on tables. It was that kind of game where you're sitting there and you're watching this epic collapse. And you're like, don't run to the corner, don't run to the corner. And then they run to the corner, like, call timeout, throw the ball deep. And then they throw the ball right towards them. It was just everything that if there was a book that was written about things not to do when you're in a hurry and when you're in a panic and up 10 points with 30 seconds, I mean, they wouldn't be able to write that book, because they just it's one of those things where I feel so bad for those kids, but it was such a great, miraculous comeback by A&M. It was one of the best things I've ever seen.
You know, and Jay, obviously you've been asked about, and it's been referenced a ton, obviously, your comeback against Maryland.
Really?
Just to serve it back at Peter.
That's nice.
When you guys were down 10, 54 seconds left,
that was great.
And you led Duke back to that win. But I'm wondering, is there anything you were seeing at that moment in the body language of the Maryland players that you also were seeing with what was going on yesterday with Northern Iowa in those final moments?
Yeah, for sure. It was, first off, Juan Dixon and all those guys were like my boys. Like, I've hung out with Steve Lake since the 5-star days, so I knew all those guys. And it was, I got asked this morning, I was doing SportsCenter, and they're like, what do you pay attention to? And this is just, look, you guys are always going to get, real talk from me, right?
Yeah.
You always pay attention, like, who's that one girl that I want to make like my girl?
Right.
Like, joking around, like prison talk, right? Like, who am I going to make my girl?
Yeah.
And it's almost in a way, like, and it's nothing against him, but sometimes you can tell the players that don't really want the basketball at end of game scenarios. They just have a tendency where they lean a little bit away, or they might run towards the ball, but they're not running towards the ball with like
a purpose.
Like, hey, give me the ball look. So we had one of those, and Drew Nicholas a little bit. We lured him towards the corner, and sorry, Peter. And it's like one of those things where you could just tell there were multiple players last night for UNI that just looked like they didn't want the ball. And how about Daniel House? I mean, the guy's 0 from 9 from the field, but he still has the moxie to take the last second shots. I mean, it just, once again, I felt like a lot of UNI players didn't want the ball, and they were forced to actually get the ball, and just. That's what happens when you panic. You don't think. Like, why are you running to the corner? Like, you never run to the corner. You always try to catch the ball in the middle. By the way, the guy on the baseline didn't run the baseline. He could have ran the baseline. He just stood there. So these are all things like you're like a deer in headlights. It's like almost you're destined for that failure because you're just so tight about the whole situation.
Yeah, and you had to think that when they get the one opportunity and get away and get a dunk and then get it back up to 5, they think, all right, we figured this thing out. And then, of course, it all ends up crashing down.
Well, that call on Alex Caruso was a really bad call. That wasn't an and-one. The poor kid, I don't know if that was Jesperson or who it was, but he had his hands up, and Caruso was able to attack the rim, and he laid the ball in without anybody touching him. And then the ref called a foul about 2 heartbeats after the ball went in. But once again, man, the best teams don't always win the games. It's about, putting together the right run at the right time. That's what the NCAA tournament's about. I mean, look, Wisconsin, Xavier. That kid, Bronson Koenig, makes a shot at the top of the key after dribbling the ball around for 15 seconds. That everybody in the war room was like, that's a bad shot. That's a bad shot. That's a great shot. That's a great shot.
Of course.
And then he makes that game-winning shot in the corner. That's a game that Xavier, you have to be sick. They had that game won.
I'm talking to our very own Jay Williams as we get ready for round number 3, the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. So what side do you lean on, that there's parity because number 2 Michigan gets knocked off in the first round, or there's not parity because 15 of the 16 teams remaining are all from power conferences, except Gonzaga, which is a team that's got a history of doing well in the tournament. So is there parity or not in your mind?
I don't think there's been parity this year. I think there might have been parities, once we get into conference play and you're seeing, some mid-major teams, struggle. But, look at the teams that we're talking about now. Kansas, Maryland, Miami, Nova, Oregon, Duke, Oklahoma. I mean, Gonzaga, look, they did struggle to get into the tournament. They had to win the WCC tournament, but we've been talking about Gonzaga for years prior. I mean, they've been one of the main staples of college basketball. North Carolina, Indiana, Notre Dame, I mean, Syracuse. So for as much parity as everybody said there were, like I kept saying this at the beginning of the year, I'm like, the Final Four are going to be all blue bloods. And it's not saying that Middle Tennessee couldn't beat Michigan State, because that did happen, but I don't see any of those teams being strong enough to be a Final Four contender or an Elite Eight contender.
Well, Jason, listen, if Maryland Duke ends up matching up in that Final Four, I demand you and I find a place to watch this game together and put the whole thing on YouTube.
Well, I don't think Duke is going to pass Oregon, man.
It's a tough draw for both of them, right? But that Oregon draw must be particularly scary.
Yeah, just because of their ability to run. I'll tell you, I mean, Kansas is a scary matchup for you guys, and I'll just say this about your squad, P. Like, I love watching Melo Trimble play. I've known Rasheed Suleiman since he's been a teenager, but sometimes, like, I don't know who you guys are. Like,
right.
I sit there and I watch your games. I'm like, just run, please, just unleash the animal from his cage. Just run and just attack, and let Jake Layman get some easy buckets. Let Rasheed attack and transition. Let Robert Carter make trail threes. Sometimes you guys get caught in this half-court game, and it makes me frustrated.
No, you nailed it, man. The Maryland, I think, is as talented a team as in college basketball right now. I think 3 or 4 players on that team could be in the NBA, but you're right. When they don't run, and Melo, who's going to be a great NBA player, I think, one day, has a tendency to slow down. And when he slows down and doesn't let Suleiman run, they're not the same team. So anyways, good luck to you moving forward, man. I hope you guys lose as soon as possible.
Hey, you think Melo's going to be a great NBA player? That's a tough position to be a great NBA point guard, man.
It's a very tough position.
I'm saying you start using the word great. I'm just throwing it out there, Peter.
Sorry. Well, listen,
great.
you know what? I don't know a damn thing, because if you had told me in 2002 that the Terp who would go on to have a 10, 12-year NBA was going to be Steve Blake, I never would have believed that between him and Juan Dixon, he was the NBA star. But then you look back and you go, oh, well, the way he played the game made more sense for the NBA than Dixon's game, which was kind of a spot-up shooter, a little bit too small for the NBA. So you never know, dude.
I agree. That's like busting your chops. That's all.
Oh, well, we love when you do that.
Yeah, that was actually, you did an excellent job of it, Jay. Come back anytime.
Thanks, buddy. Enjoy it.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Cheers.